So in the previous video I talked about how to create bombs. Now in this video I'm going to attach the metal plates that we have here. Starting with the stilts, I'm going to create something new for the flaps. Then I'm going to explain how to attach the plates that we have here. The shoulder one, so this one moves up when the clavicle rotates. Then some extra controls for the flaps on the back. As for the antennas here, these are going to use the same rig as we did for the fingers. So I'm not going to talk about that one in depth. But first let's start off with the stilts. As for the stilts, we have the main lag slave joints we have in here, but we don't have the slave joints for the stilt itself. So I'm going into the master control, and let's see if I can find the stilts, which are part of the root. Let's see if I can. These are the stilts. So I'm going to select the bones that are in the stilt. And for this one I'm also going to select the last one in this chain. As we might export this character to a game, you always want to have the last part of the foot in there to detect where the ground is. So you have all sorts of manners to find out where this point is and maybe push the leg or the entire stilt up when it touches the ground. So I'll just select all of these and I'll go into the script editor and let's generate the slave joints. We can close the master control group again. Let's go back to the outliner. And we can also hide the stilts in here again. So we just parent them together. Parent them to the last one in here. So as I said, I'll just only do the left side of the character and leave the right side for later. So let's start skinning. And luckily everything is grouped correctly, which makes it a lot easier. So this one goes to the knee, as the knee is the one that stays static. And then I'll select the knee and the part here, and I'll skin the rubber band in between. And let's see how this looks. So now when we have the stilts on, this looks okay. I only have to make sure that when I move stilt up, that this part looks a bit better. And the easy thing is, because we skinned to just 2 bones, I can select a part down here and a part up here and just hit average. And as you can see, it will try and create a nice arc in between. Just select the edge loops and just do a copy skin. something like this. So when we move the stilts up and down right now, it bends correctly. Now the only thing that we have to do is, because we're blending, and the blending can go out of sync, I'll just select the controller, load it, and then select the jump still left, and just tweak the visibility. So I want to have it visible here, and then we go out of sync. I want to remove the visibility on the stilt. So that should be correct for the stilt. Now let's hide this stilt, or let's hide them both. And let's go over to the flaps here. And let's isolate select. And same here, I'll just generate it for one side. So easiest way that I can think of might be selecting the edges. And then going into the curves menu, and then duplicate surface curves, and then again attach, and then we can delete all the duplicated curves so we have a single curve in there. And the same for the other side. Let's see if we can grab an entire edge loop. Something like that. Do it again, duplicate surface curves and attach. So now we can select both duplicated curves, display Nurbs CVs. As you can see, there are a lot of CVs in there. Let's go to the curves, press rebuild options. Make sure that we have it cubic. Now let's see what this makes of it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spans. There would be 1 controller, 2 controllers, 3 controllers, 4 controllers. That sounds about right. So I'll just keep this. Remove isolate select. And I'll go into surfaces, loft, and as you can see, it generated a Nurbs surface. And this the thing we're going to use to manipulate the cloth piece. Just select the top 2 rows and cluster them. A row here. A row here, and this one here. Now we're going to create a Nurbs circle, group it, and place it on the cluster. Do the same for the rest. And let's scale them down a bit so they match the volume of this piece of cloth, and we can freeze transform these. Now that we group them and put them all together, let's select and give them a proper name. So that's the left strap control, left strap control group, and just parent the cluster handles inside the controls. And then parent the groups to the previous controls. So now if I show the surface, whenever I rotate this, you can see that the flap will automatically get a really nice arc because of the Nurbs plane. The only thing that I have to do now is I'm going in display Nurbs CVs and I have to see that the creation of the Nurbs patch will always be perfect UV space. So if I'm going to show that in the UV editor, as you can see, there are some extra lines in there. That means that those lines are the, let's see if we can remove the grid. So this is the UV that I got. And you can see that the direction of U is along this line and the direction of V is along this line. So if I'm going to create hair, create hair, I want to add bones in the direction of U or follicles in the direction of U, but just a single one in the direction of V. So we're only going to mess with the U count. And for this one I want to have 6 follicles generated. So I hit apply and you don't see anything because I'm in isolate select mode. So when you generate the follicles, you get the hair system, PFX hair, nucleus, and for each follicle you get an empty group inside. Just select them all and delete it. And let's rename the follicles. Like this. Let's go back in isolate select mode. And we can tweak the follicle positions. For instance, this one is not exactly at the end. So I press 1 on U and it moves automatically over the UV space. Same with the one at the beginning. I want this to have this one at 0. Then this one needs to be 0.4. 0.6, 0.8. So now they are evenly spaced. And I'll just generate a joint chain of 6 joints. And then for each follicle, select the joint and just do a point constraint. Delete the point constraints, freezes transformations, and then let's go into skeleton orient joint. Make sure that X points downwards to the next joint and that the Z can point into the negative X. And then the last one can have the same as the parent. And now I want to do point constraint, but I also want to do an orient constraint with offset. So it keeps the same orientation as we just gave it, but it will follow the follicles when we move them. Let's rename the joints. And let's get out of isolate select mode. And I'll show you what's going to happen if I rotate the controls now. So if I work with this control, everything moves with it. And now if I select this one, you can see that it tries to create a nice arc. It doesn't always follow the joint chain itself, but it follows the tangent of the Nurbs plane. So that's something to keep an eye out. But you can also automatically stretch the flaps. So you can add a little bit of extra depth to how these flaps move. For instance, if the character goes really fast, you can stretch it a little bit, give it a little bit more feel to it. So I'll select all the strap joints that we have here, and also select the last one and generate slave joints. And do the parenting. And let's also show this one. And just parent the strap joint to the slave pelvis. We can remove the local rotation axis from these, and these can also be parented to the master root spine 0, so they are hidden. And now we can just select the joints that we have here, and we skin these. And I'll quickly pause the video and do the other side as well. So now I created the controls on the other side as well. We can name the straps as well. Something like this. You can delete the curves that we created in the beginning. We can select the strap surface and the follicles, in which I also parented the right straps. Those can go into the don't touch group. And the left strap control and the right strap control, they can both get an orient constraint from the master control, so that they always point downwards. So I'll just add the orient constraint, and because we still left it in maintain offset, those should not move too much. And then you can parent them to the pelvis control, or let's be safe and just create a locator. I call it C pelvis locator. Go in the master group, select the first spine joint, do a parent constraint, offset off, parent both groups into this locator, and parent the locator back to the master control. This will now leave a lot of clusters, so I'm going to show nothing, and I'm going to show the deformers. Yes. Select all the clusters and just add them to the don't touch layer, so the controls are still visible and everything still works. Now I added these bones, but I didn't skin them yet, because this is a single mesh and I did not add the bones for the right side. What I'm going to do is just select the single face and just add values. As you can see, I'm just adding all the bones in there, so that these bones are now part of the entire skin. Just go back in here, make sure we add labels because we added new joints. As you can see, it correctly finds the left and right. And then we're just going to mirror scum weights, and again from positive to negative X, choosing the label and mirror, and double check, and this seems fine. As for this pouch, it's just a copy pose. Let's see if so from the, let's use the original base that we have, because this one is a little bit over the edge of the two. So I'm going to use the full mesh and select all the objects in the pouch and just use a copy pose. I didn't seem to want to copy these, so I'll just bind them myself. That looks okay. And for the cleanup of the skin, I'll just do that later. And everything that is metal in this part can just be skinned on the pelvis bone. And then we can take a look to these these plates here. Seems like it's not properly parented. So that should be okay now. So for these I'm just going to attach a joint somewhere here, which is going to be part of the spine. So when we rotate this one in, it has a different rotation from the pelvis, so this slides over and makes way for the bomb belt that we have here. But first I'm going to scale up the controls that we have in here, so they can be selected a bit better. And this is now easier than it was before, because now we can see what the mesh is going to, or is, with the entire armor parts around it. Just scale everything up so an animator can select it. And you can tweak the shape how much you want. So it's also a little bit, it's visibly appealing for people to select it. So something like this. So now when we rotate this in, the part that we have here should also rotate in a little bit. So let's just select the entire part here, or let's keep it more to this side. Just cluster the component and generate a joint. Select the cluster, select the joint, and just do a point constraint. Now we can just delete the cluster and just select the spine that we want to attach it to, select the joint and do an orient constraint without offset. So it has a similar orientation. And let's grab the name here. So that's the geo belt back. Let's call it left belt back joint. And we can parent it to the spine. Or let's unhide the original spine. And parent it to that. Right away let's generate a slave joint on top of it. And select all the components in here and skin them to the slave joint, so we can already see what's going on when we use the controller later on. I'm going to open the control editor and grab a pin, group it, and then select the slave joint, just parent to it, and then set the translates and rotates to 0. And let's see what that does with the group. Okay, now it's placed on the inside. Select the curve and just rotate 180 degrees. Scale it down, but still make it easy to select for an animator. And because this one is now grouped, we can freeze transform it and it will keep all the rotation values that it had, but still places it on 0. I'll immediately lock and hide the scales in there. Grab the name and call it control. Almost accidentally freeze transformed it, but because I locked scale X and visibility, it could not freeze transform. Create a locator, select the spine, select the locator and do a parent constraint, and call it spine, C-spine locator, so we can parent the control on top of it, so we will always move with the spine. And then we can do a constraint, point, and orient without offset. So this moves the piece. And as we see when we rotate it inwards, it rotates with it. Now we still have this part in here. So I'll hide the original skeleton. Let's show joints. And select components in this one. So I want the entire edge here. And just set weight to 1. So when we move the control away, this one stretches. Let's go in here. And do a little bit more of the component manipulation. So I want to copy it here. Select the outer edges and just click average. And as long as you keep 2 vertices selected, you can press down to go into a direction over the edges. And keep pressing G to repeat last command to get a decent flow of the weights in between. And the last bit I'll just do with a weight hammer. Do the same for the other side. So that's where it went wrong. So if it doesn't find the correct loop, it will try to find the shortest edge path, and then you can't do the trick with G anymore. So now this has become a nice stretchy part. move this back. And next up is the pectoralis, the bump, belt, the shoulder pad, and the 2 extra flaps on the back.